Abused dog found cowering in the woods. But when the vet discovers this, the old Victorian house creaked with the first hints of dawn. Eleanor stirred beneath her patchwork quilt, the faint scent of lavender clinging to the well-worn fabric. Sunlight, filtered through the lace curtains, cast long shadows across the floral wallpaper, illuminating dust motes dancing in the stillness. It was a familiar scene, a comforting routine that had marked the passage of time for more years than she cared to count. Eleanor, a woman whose age was etched more in the gentle lines around her eyes than in the numbers on her birth certificate, rose slowly, her joints protesting with a symphony of pops and clicks. She padded across the worn wooden floorboards to the window, gazing out at the familiar sight of her garden. Morning glories, their trumpets unfurling in the soft light, climbed the weathered trellis. Roses, heavy with dew, nodded their fragrant heads in the gentle breeze. Beyond the picket fence, the small town of Havenwood, Maine, was slowly awakening. A lone pickup truck rumbled down Main Street, and the distant chatter of birdsong filled the air. It was a picture of tranquility, yet a deep ache settled in Eleanor's chest. The house, once filled with the warmth of her late husband, John's laughter, now echoed with an unsettling silence. John, her rock, her confidant, her partner in every adventure, had been gone for 6 months now, leaving a void that no amount of sunshine or birdsong could fill. She moved through her morning rituals with a practiced ease born of years of repetition. Coffee brewed, its aroma filling the kitchen with a comforting warmth. Toast popped from the aging toaster, its chrome dulled with time. Eleanor ate breakfast at the small table by the window, her gaze drifting towards John's empty chair. "Morning, John," she whispered, a habit she couldn't seem to break. Another beautiful day. The silence that followed was her only answer. After breakfast, Eleanor donned her gardening gloves, the worn leather soft against her skin. The garden had always been their shared passion, a testament to their love for the land and for each other. Now it was a solace, a place where she could lose herself in the rhythm of weeding, pruning, and nurturing. As she tended to her roses, a flash of movement at the edge of the woods caught her eye. A small, huddled shape, barely discernible amongst the undergrowth. Curiosity piqued, Eleanor cautiously approached, her heart pounding with a mixture of apprehension and concern. As she drew closer, the shape resolved itself into a dog, a pitiful creature, its ribs showing through its matted fur. His eyes, dull and filled with fear, met hers with a heartbreaking plea. A raw wound marred its flank, and its tail tucked between its legs spoke volumes of its suffering. Eleanor's heart ached. She had always had a soft spot for animals, and the sight of this poor creature, clearly abandoned and abused, filled her with a surge of protective anger. Crouching down, she spoke softly, her voice a gentle balm in the morning air. There, little one," she crooned. "It's all right. I won't hurt you." The dog flinched at her touch, but didn't run. Eleanor, with a patience born of years of tending to wounded creatures, both animal and human, slowly coaxed the dog towards her, offering a piece of crumbled biscuit. The dog hesitated, then, driven by hunger and perhaps a flicker of hope, crept forward and took the offering from her outstretched hand. In that moment, something shifted within Eleanor. The emptiness that had haunted her since John's passing seemed to lessen, replaced by a surge of purpose. This creature, this lost soul, needed her, and perhaps, just perhaps, she needed him too. "Come on, sweetheart," she murmured, her voice thick with emotion. "Let's get you home." With a gentle tug on his makeshift collar, Eleanor led the dog towards the house, the morning sun casting long shadows behind them. As they walked, a sense of hope, fragile yet undeniable, bloomed in her heart. Perhaps this unexpected encounter was the beginning of a new chapter, a chance to heal, to love, and to find purpose once again. The old house, accustomed to the quiet rhythm of Eleanor's solitary life, seemed to hum with a new energy as she ushered the timid dog across the threshold. He hesitated at the doorway, his wary eyes taking in the unfamiliar surroundings. The scent of beeswax and old furniture, the ticking of the grandfather clock in the hallway, the faint hum of the refrigerator, all were alien to him. Eleanor, sensing his apprehension, knelt down, her gaze level with his. "It's all right," she reassured him, her voice soft and soothing. "You're safe now." She led him to the kitchen, where she had prepared a makeshift bed from an old blanket and a cushion. He approached cautiously, sniffing the air, before tentatively settling down, his body still tense with uncertainty. Eleanor filled a bowl with water and placed it beside him. He lapped at it gratefully, the sound of his drinking a welcome melody in the quiet house. She then prepared a simple meal of cooked chicken and rice, watching as he devoured it with a ravenous hunger that spoke of days, perhaps weeks, of neglect. As the day progressed, Eleanor busied herself with making the dog comfortable. She cleaned and disinfected his wound, wincing at the sight of the raw flesh. She brushed his matted fur, revealing a coat of once lustrous brown beneath the tangles. With each gentle touch, she sensed a gradual easing of his fear, a subtle shift in his demeanor. She decided to name him Chance, a name that seemed fitting for this creature who had stumbled into her life, offering her a chance at companionship, a chance to heal, a chance to love again. Chance, however, remained wary. He flinched at sudden movements, cowered at the sound of raised voices, and his eyes held a deep-seated sadness that tugged at Eleanor's heartstrings. She knew that trust, like a fragile seedling, needed time and nurturing to grow. Days turned into weeks, and gradually, Chance began to settle into his new life. He followed Eleanor around the house, his tail giving a tentative wag when she spoke to him. He would lie at her feet while she read, his head resting on her lap as she watched television. He even ventured into the garden with her, sniffing curiously at the flowers and chasing butterflies with a newfound playfulness. One evening, as Eleanor sat by the fireplace, a book open but forgotten in her lap, Chance crept closer, resting his head on her knee. She looked down at him, her heart swelling with affection. Slowly, hesitantly, she reached out and stroked his head. He leaned into her touch, his eyes closing in contentment. In that moment, a silent understanding passed between them, a bond forged in shared vulnerability, in the quiet comfort of companionship. Eleanor knew that Chance's journey to healing would be long, but she was committed to being there for him every step of the way. And as she looked into his eyes, she saw a flicker of trust, a spark of hope that mirrored her own. Life with Chance settled into a comfortable rhythm. The once silent house now echoed with the soft patting of paws and the occasional happy bark. Chance, no longer the timid creature Eleanor had found cowering in the woods, had blossomed. His coat gleamed with health, his eyes sparkled with mischief, and his tail wagged with an enthusiasm that brought a smile to Eleanor's face each morning. Their days took on a predictable pattern, a comforting routine that eased the ache of loneliness that had plagued Eleanor since John's passing. Mornings began with a leisurely stroll through the quiet streets of Havenwood, Chance trotting happily by her side, greeting familiar faces with a wagging tail and the occasional friendly sniff. Havenwood, a small town nestled amidst the rolling hills of Maine, was a place where life moved at a slower pace. Neighbors knew each other by name, front porches were gathering places for evening chats, and the local diner was the hub of community gossip. Eleanor, a lifelong resident, was a beloved figure in the town, known for her kindness, her gentle spirit, and her prize-winning blueberry pies. After their morning walk, Eleanor would tend to her garden, Chance a constant shadow at her heels. He would lie patiently beside her as she weeded the flower beds, his head resting on his paws, watching her with an almost reverent attention. Occasionally, he would chase butterflies through the tall grasses, his joyful barks echoing through the garden. In the afternoons, they would often visit the local library, a haven of peace and quiet. Eleanor, an avid reader, would lose herself in the world of books, while Chance dozed contentedly at her feet. The librarian, Mrs. Henderson, a woman with a warm smile and a fondness for animals, always had a treat ready for Chance, much to his delight. Evenings were spent by the fireplace, Eleanor knitting or reading, Chance curled up beside her. The crackling fire, the ticking clock, the gentle rhythm of her needles. It was a scene of domestic tranquility that filled Eleanor with a sense of peace she hadn't felt in months. Chance's presence had brought a renewed sense of purpose to Eleanor's life. Caring for him, nurturing him, loving him, it filled the void left by John's passing, reminding her of the joy of connection, the beauty of unconditional love. One sunny afternoon, as they were strolling through the town square, they encountered a group of children playing frisbee. Chance, his playful instincts awakened, watched with eager interest. One of the children, a freckle-faced boy named Tommy, noticed Chance's enthusiasm and, with a mischievous grin, tossed the frisbee in his direction. Chance, startled at first, hesitated for a moment. Then, with a sudden burst of energy, he took off after the frisbee, his tail wagging furiously. He caught it mid-air, his whole body vibrating with excitement. The children cheered, their laughter filling the air. Eleanor watched, her heart swelling with pride. Chance, the once timid and abused dog, was now a happy, playful companion. His spirit healed, his trust restored. And as she watched him frolic with the children, she realized that he had not only brought joy back into her life, but had also opened her heart to the possibility of new connections, new friendships, new beginnings. Summer ripened into autumn, painting Havenwood in hues of gold and crimson. The air grew crisp, carrying the scent of wood smoke and fallen leaves. Eleanor and Chance continued their daily routines, their bond deepening with each passing day. Chance, now fully recovered from his ordeal, was a constant source of joy, his playful antics and unwavering loyalty bringing a lightness to Eleanor's heart she hadn't felt in years. However, a shadow lingered beneath the surface of their idyllic life. Chance, despite his outward exuberance, still bore the scars of his past abuse. Loud noises, sudden movements, and even the raised voices of children playing in the distance could trigger a trembling fear in his eyes, a momentary retreat to the scared, wounded creature Eleanor had found in the woods. One crisp October morning, as Eleanor and Chance were returning from their daily walk, a black pickup truck rumbled to a stop beside them. A man emerged, his face weathered and stern, his eyes narrowed as they settled on Chance. Eleanor felt a shiver of apprehension run down her spine. "That your dog, ma'am?" the man asked, his voice gruff. Eleanor nodded, her grip tightening on Chance's leash. Chance, sensing her unease, pressed close to her leg, his tail tucked between his legs. "He looks mighty familiar," the man continued, his eyes raking over Chance's form. "Reminds me of one I lost a while back." Eleanor's heart pounded in her chest. She knew, instinctively, that this man was somehow connected to Chance's past, to the abuse he had suffered. A wave of protective anger surged through her. "He's mine now," she stated firmly, her voice trembling slightly. "And he's staying with me." The man chuckled, a harsh, humorless sound. "You sure about that, ma'am? He's got a way of running off, that one. Might just find his way back to his rightful owner." He stepped closer, his shadow falling over Eleanor and Chance. Chance whimpered, his body trembling. Eleanor felt a surge of fear, but she stood her ground, her resolve hardening. "He's not going anywhere," she declared, her voice gaining strength. "Now, if you'll excuse us, we have to get home." The man stared at her for a moment, his eyes hard and cold. Then, with a shrug, he turned and climbed back into his truck. The engine roared to life, and the truck sped away, leaving Eleanor and Chance standing on the sidewalk, their hearts pounding. Eleanor knelt down, wrapping her arms around Chance, his trembling body a stark reminder of the trauma he had endured. She stroked his fur, whispering soothing words, until his trembling subsided. As they walked home, Eleanor's mind raced. Who was that man? What was his connection to Chance? And what did he mean by rightful owner? A sense of foreboding settled over her, a dark cloud threatening the peaceful life she had built with Chance. She knew that the encounter was not just a random incident. It was a harbinger of something more, a reminder that Chance's past had not been fully laid to rest. And as she looked at Chance, his eyes filled with a fear that mirrored her own. She knew that their peaceful haven was about to be disrupted, their bond tested in ways she couldn't have imagined. The encounter with the stranger in the black pickup truck cast a pall over the once peaceful haven of Eleanor's home. The carefree joy that had characterized their days was replaced by a gnawing anxiety, a constant vigilance. Eleanor found herself peering out the window, scanning the street for any sign of the truck, her heart quickening at the sound of any approaching vehicle. Chance, too, seemed to sense the shift in atmosphere. His playful exuberance diminished, replaced by a watchful nervousness. He would startle at the slightest sound, his ears pricked, his body tense. He clung to Eleanor's side, seeking reassurance in her touch, his eyes reflecting her own fear. The idyllic autumn days, once filled with the rustle of leaves and the chirping of birds, now echoed with the unspoken dread that hung heavy in the air. Eleanor's walks with Chance became shorter, confined to the familiar streets surrounding their home. The library, once a haven of peace, now felt exposed, vulnerable. Even the garden, their sanctuary, seemed to hold a sense of unease. One evening, as Eleanor sat by the fireplace, the flames casting dancing shadows on the walls, Chance suddenly let out a low growl, his hackles raised. Eleanor's heart leaped into her throat. She strained to listen, but could hear nothing beyond the crackling of the fire and the ticking of the clock. Chance, however, remained on high alert, his body rigid, his eyes fixed on the window. Eleanor rose cautiously, peering through the curtains. The street was empty, bathed in the pale glow of the street lamp. Yet, Chance's unease was palpable, his senses picking up something that eluded her. A cold fear gripped Eleanor's heart. Was the man from the truck watching them? Was he planning to take Chance away? The thought sent a wave of panic through her. She couldn't lose Chance, not after all they had been through, not after he had brought so much light back into her life. She resolved to take action. The next morning, she called the local police, reporting the encounter with the stranger and expressing her concerns for Chance's safety. The officer on the other end of the line listened patiently, assuring her that they would keep an eye out for the black pickup truck and investigate the matter. However, Eleanor knew that police reports and promises couldn't fully dispel the fear that had taken root in her heart. She felt a deep sense of vulnerability, a realization that the peaceful life she had built with Chance was more fragile than she had ever imagined. As the days passed, the fear gradually subsided, replaced by a quiet determination. Eleanor refused to let the shadow of Chance's past dictate their lives. She would not live in fear. She would not allow the man in the truck to steal the happiness she had found with Chance. She began to venture out again, taking Chance for longer walks, revisiting the library, and even joining the local dog walking group. She met new people, shared stories, and found solace in the companionship of other dog lovers. And as she watched Chance playing with the other dogs, his tail wagging, his eyes sparkling with joy, she knew that she had made the right decision. She would not let fear win. She would protect Chance. She would cherish their bond, and she would continue to build a life filled with love, laughter, and the simple joys of companionship. Despite her efforts to reclaim a sense of normalcy, the unsettling encounter with the stranger continued to haunt Eleanor. The man's words, "He's got a way of running off, might just find his way back to his rightful owner," echoed in her mind, fueling her anxiety. She found herself constantly watching Chance, fearing that he might suddenly disappear, snatched away by the shadowy figure from their past. One blustery November afternoon, a letter arrived, addressed in a shaky, unfamiliar hand. Eleanor's heart pounded as she opened it, a premonition of unease settling over her. The letter was from a woman named Martha, who claimed to be Chance's previous owner. She wrote of her deep regret for having to give Chance up, explaining that she had fallen on hard times and could no longer care for him. She pleaded for the opportunity to see Chance again, to assure herself of his well-being. Eleanor's emotions were a tangled knot of apprehension, sympathy, and a fierce protectiveness towards Chance. She couldn't deny the woman's plea, couldn't ignore the genuine affection that shone through her words. Yet, a nagging doubt persisted. Was this woman truly who she claimed to be? Was she connected to the man in the truck? After days of agonizing deliberation, Eleanor decided to respond to the letter. She agreed to meet Martha at a local cafe, a neutral ground where she could assess the situation and ensure Chance's safety. She chose a busy time of day, hoping the presence of other people would deter any potential trouble. The day of the meeting arrived, cold and gray, mirroring Eleanor's apprehension. She left Chance at home, entrusting him to her kind neighbor, Mrs. Peterson, with strict instructions not to let him out of her sight. Then, with a mixture of trepidation and a strange sense of anticipation, she headed towards the cafe. Martha was already there, seated at a corner table, her gaze fixed on the door. She was an older woman, her face etched with worry lines, her eyes filled with a mixture of hope and anxiety. As Eleanor approached, she rose to her feet, her hands clasped nervously in front of her. "Mrs. Davies?" she asked, her voice trembling slightly. "I'm Martha." Eleanor nodded, her gaze assessing. There was a vulnerability about Martha, a genuineness in her demeanor, that eased Eleanor's initial apprehension. They sat down, and over cups of steaming coffee, Martha recounted her story. She spoke of how she had found Chance as a stray puppy, how he had become her constant companion, her furry confidant. She described his playful nature, his love of belly rubs, his habit of chasing his tail, details that resonated with Eleanor, confirming that this woman truly knew and loved Chance. Then, her voice cracking with emotion, Martha explained how she had lost her job, how she had struggled to make ends meet, how she had been forced to make the heart-wrenching decision to give Chance away. She spoke of her guilt, her sleepless nights, her constant worry about his fate. Eleanor listened, her heart aching for the woman's pain. She saw in Martha a reflection of her own love for Chance, a shared understanding of the profound bond between humans and animals. As Martha spoke, a sense of trust bloomed in Eleanor's heart, replacing the suspicion that had plagued her. "I want you to know," Martha said, her eyes filled with tears, "that I never meant to abandon him. I couldn't bear to see him suffer." Eleanor reached across the table, her hand covering Martha's. "I know," she said softly, "and I believe you." In that moment, a connection was forged, a shared understanding born of love and loss. Eleanor knew that she had found an ally, someone who understood the depth of her bond with Chance. And as she looked at Martha, she saw not a threat, but a kindred spirit, a fellow traveler on the journey of healing and hope. The meeting with Martha opened a new chapter in Eleanor's and Chance's lives. The initial apprehension gave way to a cautious friendship as Eleanor and Martha began to spend time together, sharing stories about Chance, their love for animals, and the quiet joys of life in Havenwood. Martha, it turned out, was a woman of quiet strength and resilience. Despite the hardships she had faced, she had maintained a positive outlook, finding solace in her love for nature and her passion for painting. She had rented a small cottage on the outskirts of town and was slowly rebuilding her life, taking on odd jobs and selling her artwork at the local farmers market. Eleanor found herself drawn to Martha's gentle spirit and her unwavering kindness. They would often meet for tea, their conversations weaving a tapestry of shared experiences, laughter, and quiet understanding. Chance, initially wary of Martha, gradually warmed up to her, recognizing the familiar scent of love and affection that clung to her. One afternoon, as they were strolling through the woods, Chance leading the way with his usual boundless energy, Martha revealed a piece of information that sent a shockwave through Eleanor. "The man in the truck," Martha said, her voice hesitant. "His name is Frank. He was my partner for a while." Eleanor stopped in her tracks, her heart pounding. "Your partner?" she repeated, a sense of dread creeping in. Martha nodded, her gaze fixed on the ground. "He wasn't kind," she admitted, her voice barely above a whisper. "Especially not to Chance. That's why I had to leave." The pieces of the puzzle began to fall into place. Frank's aggressive demeanor, his claim of ownership over Chance, his veiled threats, it all made sense now. He was an abuser, a man who had inflicted pain and suffering on both Martha and Chance. Eleanor felt a surge of anger, a fierce protectiveness towards both Martha and Chance. She vowed to protect them, to shield them from Frank's malevolence. She contacted the police again, providing them with Martha's testimony, hoping it would be enough to keep Frank at bay. However, a deep unease lingered. Frank was a man who seemed to operate in the shadows, a man who knew how to manipulate and intimidate. Eleanor knew that they couldn't simply wait for him to make a move. They had to be proactive, to take control of the situation. With Martha's help, Eleanor began to gather evidence of Frank's abuse. They documented his past threats, his history of violence, his attempts to reclaim Chance. They reached out to local animal shelters and rescue organizations, alerting them to Frank's behavior and his potential threat to animals in their care. As they worked together, Eleanor and Martha's bond deepened, forged in a shared determination to protect Chance and to ensure that Frank would never again harm another living creature. They were no longer just friends, they were allies, united in a common cause, their strength amplified by their shared purpose. And as Eleanor looked at Martha, her eyes shining with a newfound resolve, she knew that they were ready to face whatever challenges lay ahead. They would not be intimidated, they would not be silenced. They would fight for Chance, they would fight for justice, and they would fight for the right to live without fear. The quiet town of Havenwood, usually a haven of tranquility, felt charged with a palpable tension. The idyllic facade of quaint houses and friendly smiles seemed to mask an undercurrent of unease, a sense of foreboding that hung heavy in the air. Eleanor, Martha, and Chance found themselves caught in the eye of the storm, their lives intertwined with the looming threat of Frank's return. Despite their efforts to alert the authorities and gather evidence, Frank remained elusive. He was a phantom, a shadow lurking in the periphery, his presence felt but unseen. The uncertainty gnawed at Eleanor, disrupting her sleep, casting a pall over her days. She found herself constantly on edge, her senses heightened, her every action tinged with a sense of caution. Martha, too, bore the weight of fear, her newfound confidence tempered by the lingering trauma of her past. She confided in Eleanor, sharing stories of Frank's manipulative behavior, his subtle threats, his ability to instill fear with a mere glance. The stories painted a chilling portrait of a man who thrived on control, a man who would stop at nothing to get what he wanted. Chance, ever attuned to his human companion's emotions, mirrored their anxiety. His playful exuberance was replaced by a watchful vigilance. He would often stand by the window, his ears pricked, his gaze scanning the street, as if anticipating Frank's arrival. His once carefree spirit was now burdened by the weight of fear, a fear that resonated through the quiet house. One evening, as a storm raged outside, mirroring the turmoil within, Eleanor received a phone call that shattered the fragile peace. It was Mrs. Peterson, her voice trembling with panic. "Eleanor," she gasped, "it's Chance. He's gone." Eleanor's heart plummeted. She rushed to Mrs. Peterson's house, her mind racing with a terrifying possibility. Had Frank finally made his move? Had he snatched Chance away in the chaos of the storm? Mrs. Peterson, her face etched with worry, explained that she had let Chance out into the backyard for a quick bathroom break. A loud clap of thunder had startled him, and he had bolted, disappearing into the darkness. She had searched frantically, but to no avail. Eleanor, her heart pounding with a mixture of fear and determination, joined the search. The storm raged on, the wind howling, the rain lashing against their faces. They called out Chance's name, their voices swallowed by the tempest. Hours passed, but there was no sign of him. As dawn broke, casting a gray light over the rain-soaked town, Eleanor returned home, exhausted and despairing. She sank into a chair, her body trembling, her mind filled with images of Chance lost and alone, at the mercy of the storm and the man who had haunted their lives. A wave of grief washed over her, a grief so profound it threatened to consume her. She had failed Chance, failed to protect him from the shadows of his past. She had allowed hope to blossom, only to have it cruelly snatched away. But amidst the despair, a spark of defiance ignited within her. She would not give up. She would not let Frank win. She would find Chance. She would bring him home, and she would face Frank, armed with the truth and the unwavering love for her loyal companion. The storm had passed, but the battle had just begun. The disappearance of Chance cast a long shadow over Havenwood. The news spread like wildfire through the close-knit community, and a wave of concern and sympathy enveloped Eleanor. Neighbors offered their support, organizing search parties, posting flyers with Chance's picture, and sharing any information that might lead to his whereabouts. Eleanor, fueled by a mix of desperation and determination, threw herself into the search. She spent her days scouring the woods, calling out Chance's name, her voice hoarse with exhaustion. She visited local shelters, vet clinics, and even the neighboring towns, leaving no stone unturned in her quest to find her beloved companion. Martha, her face etched with worry, was a constant presence by Eleanor's side. She offered comfort, shared her knowledge of Chance's habits and favorite haunts, and helped to coordinate the search efforts. Their shared grief and determination forged an even stronger bond between them, a bond that transcended their individual pain. Days turned into weeks, and the initial hope began to dwindle. The flyers faded in the sun, the search parties grew smaller, and the whispers of doubt began to creep in. Had Chance been lost to the storm? Had Frank managed to snatch him away, leaving no trace? Eleanor, however, refused to give up. She clung to the belief that Chance was out there, somewhere waiting to be found. She drew strength from the unwavering support of her community, from the kindness of strangers who offered words of encouragement and shared in her hope. One evening, as Eleanor sat by the fireplace, her gaze lost in the dancing flames, a knock on the door startled her. It was a young boy, his face flushed with excitement, his eyes shining with a glimmer of hope. "Mrs. Davies," he exclaimed, "I think I saw your dog." Eleanor's heart leaped. She grabbed her coat and followed the boy, her pulse quickening with each step. He led her to a clearing in the woods, a place she had searched countless times before. And there, amidst the trees, a familiar figure emerged from the shadows. It was Chance, his coat matted, his body thinner, but his eyes shining with recognition. He limped towards Eleanor, his tail wagging weakly. Eleanor knelt down, tears streaming down her face, and wrapped her arms around him, his familiar scent filling her senses. Chance whimpered, burying his head in her embrace. He was injured, his leg bearing the marks of a struggle, but he was alive. He had found his way back, a beacon of hope in the darkness that had enveloped their lives. Eleanor rushed Chance to the vet, where he received treatment for his injuries. The vet confirmed that he had been caught in a trap, most likely set by a hunter. He had managed to free himself, but not without sustaining injuries. It was a miracle he had survived. As Chance recovered, Eleanor pieced together the events of his disappearance. He had indeed been startled by the thunder and had run into the woods, where he had fallen victim to the trap. He had managed to escape, but had been wandering lost and injured for weeks. The young boy who had found him had been exploring the woods with his family when he spotted Chance hiding in a thicket. The return of Chance brought a wave of relief and joy to Havenwood. The community celebrated his homecoming, their faith in hope renewed. Eleanor, her heart overflowing with gratitude, realized that she was not alone in her love for Chance. The entire town had shared in her grief, her search, and now her joy. Chance's ordeal had brought them closer, strengthening the bonds of community and reminding them of the power of compassion and resilience. And as Eleanor looked at Chance, curled up by the fireplace, his tail thumping softly against the rug, She knew that their bond had been tested and strengthened, their love for each other a beacon of light in the face of adversity. The joy of Chance's return was tempered by the lingering question of Frank's involvement. While there was no direct evidence linking him to Chance's disappearance, the circumstances surrounding the incident raised suspicions. Eleanor, Martha, and the Havenwood community remained vigilant, determined to protect Chance and ensure that Frank would never again pose a threat. The police investigation into Frank's activities continued, fueled by the testimonies of Eleanor, Martha, and others who had encountered his menacing presence. The investigation revealed a pattern of abusive behavior, intimidation, and animal cruelty, painting a disturbing picture of a man who operated on the fringes of society, exploiting the vulnerable and leaving a trail of fear and suffering in his wake. As the evidence mounted, the police finally had enough to issue a warrant for Frank's arrest. The news spread through Havenwood, bringing a sense of relief and anticipation. The long shadow that had loomed over the town was finally lifting, replaced by a glimmer of hope for justice. The arrest was swift and decisive. Frank, caught off guard, offered no resistance. He was charged with multiple counts of animal cruelty, harassment, and intimidation, facing the prospect of a lengthy prison sentence. The news of his arrest brought a collective sigh of relief to Havenwood, a sense of closure and vindication for those who had suffered at his hands. With Frank behind bars, a sense of peace settled over Havenwood. The fear that had gripped the community dissipated, replaced by a renewed sense of unity and resilience. Eleanor, Martha, and Chance could finally breathe freely, their lives no longer overshadowed by the threat of Frank's return. Chance, fully recovered from his ordeal, was once again the playful, loving companion Eleanor had come to cherish. His scars, both physical and emotional, were a reminder of the darkness he had endured, but they also served as a testament to his resilience and the unwavering love that had guided him home. Eleanor and Martha's friendship deepened, their bond forged in the fires of adversity. They found solace in each other's company, sharing stories, laughter, and the quiet joys of life in Havenwood. Martha's artistic talents flourished, her paintings capturing the beauty of the main landscape and the spirit of the community that had embraced her. Life in Havenwood returned to its tranquil rhythm, but with a newfound appreciation for the fragility of peace and the importance of standing together in the face of adversity. The story of Chance, the abused dog who had found love and healing in the heart of a small town, became a local legend, a reminder of the enduring power of compassion, resilience, and the human-animal bond. And as Eleanor sat on her porch, watching Chance chase butterflies in the garden, the setting sun casting a golden glow over the peaceful scene, she knew that they had found their happily ever after, a haven of love and healing in the heart of Havenwood.